At a quiet private hospital, a black nurse spotted an elderly white man suffering a heart attack right in the lobby, with no help in sight. She broke protocol and rushed to save him without hesitation. But instead of being recognized, she was fired for overstepping. What she didn't know, the man she saved was the hospital's chairman. 3 days later, he called her in and gave her a chance that would change her life forever. Before we dive in this story, let us know where you're watching from. We love to hear your thoughts. The lobby of Riverline Medical Center was unusually calm for a Monday. Floor-to-ceiling windows let in the pale afternoon sun, bouncing off polished stone tiles that were scrubbed a little too hard by the janitor that morning. A soft instrumental tune hummed from overhead speakers, something vaguely jazzy, meant to calm nerves but barely heard over the occasional cough or the low click of a receptionist's keyboard. There were 12 people waiting in the main area. Most stared blankly at their phones, scrolling like clockwork. One elderly woman fidgeted with her purse strap, glancing toward the check-in desk every few seconds. A mother hushed a toddler with a juice box, the child's squeaky shoes tapping on the floor in a scattered rhythm. The air smelled like antiseptic and fake lemon. And then she entered. Carla Monroe pushed through the side hallway doors, clipboard in hand, blue gloves already pulled snug across her wrists. 33 years old, dark brown skin, hair pulled back into a tight bun under her scrub cap, and posture that said she was tired but still had 3 hours to go. Her uniform was standard issue, navy scrubs, badge clipped to her collar, white sneakers dulled by time. Her eyes moved quickly, scanning the room with clinical precision, then softened almost involuntarily when they met with a patient's glance. Most didn't look back. A few did, then quickly looked away. She was used to that. Carla had worked here for almost 7 years. She knew every hallway, every corner of this place, but no matter how long she stayed, some of the looks never changed. The woman at the front desk who still double-checked her ID. The older patient last week who asked if there was someone white to take his blood. The supervisor who smiled too much when correcting her tone. It wasn't new. It was just part of the job. She moved across the lobby briskly, the soles of her shoes quiet against the tile. Someone had paged for an escort nurse 5 minutes ago. New patient arriving at the main entrance. Simple task, in and out. But when she rounded the corner toward the doors, her breath caught in her throat. A man, white, maybe late 70s, was sitting alone near the entrance, hunched forward at the edge of a silver bench. One hand clutched his chest, fingers splayed, pressing into the fabric of his sweater like he was trying to keep something inside from tearing out. His face was pale. Too pale. His lips had a bluish tint around the edges. His eyes were glassy and unfocused, staring at the floor like it might disappear. Carla's voice was calm but sharp. "Sir, can you hear me?" The man didn't respond at first. Then slowly, like someone underwater, he lifted his head toward her. His mouth opened. A low groan escaped. She dropped to one knee beside him, pulling the radio from her hip. "Triage, this is Monroe. Suspected cardiac event at the front lobby. I need backup now." His eyes fluttered. "My name is Carla. I'm a nurse. Can you tell me your name?" He blinked, slow and struggling. "Walter?" "Walter Green." Carla nodded. "Okay, Walter. Don't try to move. Just breathe. I'm going to help you." He nodded faintly, lips trembling. Carla's heartbeat was steady. Her hands knew what to do. She reached into her emergency pouch, pulled out a packet of aspirin, and broke the seal. "Can you chew this for me?" He nodded again. Barely. She guided his hand. Somewhere behind the glass doors, on the far side of the lobby, a man in a tailored suit stood watching. Carla noticed him only in the corner of her eye. His arms crossed, his face unreadable. He didn't move. Didn't pick up a phone. Just stood there. Carla leaned in close, placing 2 fingers on Walter's neck. His pulse was erratic, breaths coming faster now. "Where is my backup?" she muttered into the radio. Silence. She hesitated just for a second. Should she move him? No, couldn't risk it. If it was cardiac, any jolt might make things worse, but every second she waited, his condition dipped. Sweat was beading along his forehead now. His lips parted again. I can't." "You're okay," she said, gripping his hand. "I've got you. You're not alone." Still no one came. No stretchers, no triage nurse, not even a damn intern, and the man behind the glass, still watching. Carla clenched her jaw. She wasn't angry. Yet. Not quite. That would come later. Right now, all she had was this man's wrist in her hand, and a gut-deep refusal to let him die in a hallway. Not on her watch. Not while others looked away. Not while they waited for her to make a mistake. Carla's knees were starting to ache from the cold floor, but she didn't move. Walter's breathing had slowed just slightly, enough for her to sense that the aspirin might be doing its job. Or maybe he was just losing strength. Either way, she had to keep him conscious. Her thumb gently rubbed the back of his hand. A small motion she hadn't even realized she was doing, the way her mother used to when Carla got sick as a child. "You still with me, Mr. Green?" she asked, her voice low, grounded. He nodded once, barely more than a twitch. "Good. Stay with me. We're not done yet." She pressed her radio again. "Triage, I'm still here with the cardiac patient. Where is backup?" A beat of silence. Then static crackled, followed by a voice. Calm. Too calm. "Code Blue team is delayed. Short-staffed due to administrative transition. Hold position, Monroe." Carla stared at the radio in disbelief. That was it? Hold position? She looked around the lobby. Nobody had come. The front desk had gone oddly still. The receptionist didn't even look up this time. People were avoiding eye contact. The man in the suit was still watching behind the glass, arms still crossed. No phone to his ear, no motion to help, like he wasn't even human. Administrative transition. That's what they were calling it now. She'd heard the rumors that morning. Staff cuts, budget freezes, new corporate structure. But she didn't think it would come down to this. She hadn't thought it would mean a man might die in the lobby while people watched and waited for someone else to act. Her fingers trembled slightly as she checked Walter's pulse again. His skin was slick with sweat now, and his body was beginning to slump. "I'm not letting you go like this," she whispered. Her breath caught as the pressure of the moment tightened in her chest, that invisible weight pressing from all sides. Not from the emergency itself, but from the knowledge that every second she stayed here with him, every move she made without a doctor present, without a supervisor signing off, was a violation of hospital policy. She'd seen what that meant. 3 months ago, a nurse had administered medication too soon and got suspended. Last year, an EMT performed CPR without physician clearance and was let go for procedural overreach. Carla knew the rules, and she knew what would happen if someone decided to blame her for stepping out of her lane. But what other lane was there? What kind of system told a nurse not to act while a man died in front of her? She looked down at Walter again. His fingers clutched hers now, weak and shaking, like a child gripping something in the dark. She could see the panic in his eyes. He was scared, scared in that deep, helpless way only people facing death understand. She recognized it. She'd seen it too many times. "I've got you," she murmured, voice steady. "You're not leaving here today, not like this." A whisper escaped his lips. "Thank you for staying." Carla almost flinched at that. It was such a simple phrase, but it hit too deep, because she knew, without needing to ask, that he'd been left before, that he had expected it, that even now, with his life hanging by a thread, he assumed she might still walk away like the others. And for a moment, a split second, Carla did think about standing up and walking away, not because she didn't care, but because she was angry, furious. Not just at the hospital, not just at the man behind the glass, but at the whole goddamn machine that put her in this position. She was angry that she had to choose between doing her job and keeping her job, angry that saving someone's life could be the thing that ended hers, angry that no matter how many certifications she had, how many patients she'd helped, there were still people, higher-ups, admin types, even patients, who looked at her and saw someone who didn't belong. Angry that her dark skin still made her presence feel like a question mark to people who should have known better. But the anger couldn't have her, not now. So instead she took a slow breath, let it out through her nose, focused on Walter's hand, still wrapped around hers, on the rhythm of his breath, ragged but there. Then her mind pulled her elsewhere, her mom. Geneva Monroe, old-school nurse from the South Side clinics, the kind who used to bring soup to her patients on weekends, who had taught Carla that healing people meant more than taking vitals. Her mother had lost her job at 52 for calling out a racist doctor who falsified a patient chart. Carla remembered coming home from school that day to find her mother sitting on the couch, uniform still on, staring at her nursing badge like it had betrayed her. Carla had promised herself that day she would never stop doing what was right just because someone in an office thought it was wrong. And now that promise was here, living, breathing, groaning, dying in her arms. She squeezed Walter's hand tighter. Behind her, the man in the suit shifted slightly, crossed one leg, that was all. Still no help. Still no shame. Just that blank, managerial stare like he was watching a spreadsheet unfold. Carla's jaw tightened. Another minute passed. Then 2. The doors burst open. Patient. A stretcher came in first, followed by 2 paramedics. She stood up fast, already listing off vitals. Name: Walter Green, male, late 70s, suspected myocardial infarction, administered aspirin, stabilized pulse, respiration shallow, no prior known history available. He wasn't conscious enough to confirm more. The paramedics nodded and moved in sync. As they lifted Walter onto the gurney, he reached out, grabbed Carla's hand again, this time tighter. His eyes locked on hers. "You're the only one who came," he rasped. Her throat went tight. She nodded once, didn't trust herself to speak. Then she let go. They wheeled him away. As the door swung shut behind them, Carla stood in the middle of the lobby, breath still short, heart still pounding. Around her, no one clapped, no one said thank you. The receptionist had returned to her typing. The mother with the toddler had put headphones on. The man in the suit had vanished. Carla adjusted her badge, gathered her clipboard, and turned toward the hallway. She didn't feel like a hero. She felt like someone who was about to get called into HR. The locker room was quiet, the kind of silence that wasn't peaceful but suffocating. The industrial lights above buzzed faintly as if they too were tired. Carla sat on the bench, still in her scrubs, hands resting on her thighs, trying to breathe like a normal person, trying not to let her mind jump too far ahead. She had done what she was trained to do, what she had sworn to do, and now she waited. Her phone buzzed once in the pocket of her scrub top. No ringtone, no fanfare, just a single vibration that echoed too loudly in the empty room. She pulled it out slowly, already feeling the wrongness of the moment crawling under her skin. The screen lit up. One new message. HR department. Her thumb hovered over the notification. She didn't open it right away. She didn't need to. Somewhere deep in her gut, she already knew what it would say. Maybe it was the way people avoided her in the hallway after the incident. Maybe it was the way the charge nurse didn't even look her in the eye. Or maybe it was the man in the suit, the one who watched Walter Green cling to life like it was a thread slipping through his fingers, and did nothing. She tapped the message. Subject: Immediate termination of contract, Carla Monroe. Body: Dear Ms. Monroe, following review of your conduct on May 23rd, specifically your unauthorized medical intervention during an unsupervised cardiac event, we regret to inform you that your employment with Riverline Medical Center has been terminated, effective immediately. This action is in alignment with revised procedural policy requiring physician presence during all critical response measures. We thank you for your service and professionalism during your tenure. Sincerely, Human Resources. Carla blinked once, then again. Her eyes didn't move. She stared at the screen until it dimmed and went black. Then she just sat there. No emotion came immediately, no explosion, just a strange emptiness, like someone had opened a trapdoor beneath her chest and let everything fall through. She looked up at the mirror across the room. Her reflection stared back, eyes dull, jaw clenched, lips slightly parted like she'd just forgotten what words were. That wasn't how this day was supposed to end, not after saving someone's life. She let the phone slip from her hand onto the bench. The sound of plastic on metal echoed more than it should have. She exhaled through her nose, slow and even. But then her fingers curled tightly into her palms. A crack started forming, not in her voice, not in her face, but deep inside. This wasn't a mistake. This was a message. A warning sent from the top, loud and cold. Stay in your place, follow the rules, don't think, just obey. And if someone dies while you hesitate, well, at least the protocol was clean. She stood up slowly, walked over to her locker, and pulled open the door. Her badge was still pinned to her coat. Her nursing license hung in a simple black frame on the inside wall, right where she'd placed it 5 years ago with pride. She reached up, unhooked the frame, and held it in her hands. There were no words to describe the mix of emotion twisting through her. She wanted to scream. She wanted to march into the office of whoever approved that decision and slam the email down in front of them. She wanted to demand why saving a man's life made her expendable. But more than anything, she wanted someone, anyone, to tell her she wasn't wrong. The locker room door creaked open behind her. Carla didn't turn. "You okay?" a voice asked, hesitant. It was Gina, a younger nurse, barely out of school, standing awkwardly in the doorway. Carla saw her reflection in the mirror, hands fiddling with her lanyard, voice careful like someone approaching a wounded animal. Carla didn't answer right away. Then she nodded once. "I'm fine." Gina stepped in slowly. "I heard what happened. About the email." Carla set the license down on the bench, voice low. "Did you hear what happened before that?" Gina paused. "You mean the old guy?" "Had a heart attack in the lobby. I did what anyone with a soul would have done, what we're trained to do. I didn't wait for permission." Gina looked down, her face red. "You probably saved him. I know I did." Silence stretched between them. Gina swallowed. "It's not fair." Carla let out a small, bitter laugh. "Fair, Gina. I've worked here almost a decade, picked up shifts on holidays, stayed late when everyone else left, sat with people dying so they wouldn't be alone. I've cleaned blood off floors no one else wanted to touch. And now I'm disposable because I moved too fast. Because I didn't wait for a man in a tie to sign off while someone choked on his last breath." She didn't raise her voice, didn't cry, but every word cut like glass. Gina didn't say anything after that. She gave a small nod, then turned and left without another word. Carla sat again, slower this time. Her body ached, not from fatigue, but from restraint. She wanted to throw the frame across the room. Instead, she stared at it. Her name engraved neatly in gold. Carla Monroe, RN. It used to mean something. She picked up her phone and scrolled back to the message. She read it again, word for word, like maybe this time it would say something different. It didn't. Unauthorized intervention, immediate termination. That's what they'd call it on paper. A policy violation. But in her heart, Carla knew what it really was. It was a punishment. Not for breaking rules, but for breaking expectations. For being the black woman who acted when no one else did. For refusing to stay silent, small, obedient. For doing the right thing when it was inconvenient for the system. She looked at the mirror again. Her eyes weren't dull anymore. They were sharp now, focused, still hurt, still raw, but different. This wasn't the end of something, not really. It was the beginning of a fight. She gathered her things slowly, deliberately, folded her scrubs, put her license back in her bag, clipped her badge to the outside. One last walk through the hallways, one last look at the place where she gave more than they ever deserved. No security guard walked her out, no goodbye from the admin team. Just the quiet hum of machines, fluorescent lights, and the soft echo of her own footsteps as she left through the staff exit. The sun had already set, but Carla didn't look back. The apartment was quiet, not peaceful quiet, just still, like the kind of quiet that settles after something breaks. Carla sat at her kitchen table, her laptop open in front of her, unread emails glowing softly in the screen's blue light. 3 days had passed. 3 days without putting on her badge, without checking vitals or reviewing charts or tying her scrub strings in the mirror. She had barely spoken a word. The world outside kept spinning, but her little orbit had stalled, floating in place with no clear direction. A part of her kept thinking someone from the hospital might call. Maybe a supervisor realizing they'd gone too far. Maybe someone with a sliver of conscience. But her phone stayed silent, and she knew better than to hold out for justice from people who had none. Her eyes drifted to the framed license still lying face down on the kitchen counter. She hadn't put it back on the wall, not yet. Every time she looked at it, the words from the HR email echoed in her head. Unauthorized intervention, immediate termination. It had been printed so clean, so calculated, like a math problem with no room for human cost. She exhaled slowly, pulled her cardigan tighter around her shoulders, and reached for her coffee. It had gone cold hours ago, but she drank it anyway. Just as she stood to dump the rest out, her phone buzzed. She paused mid-step, glanced at the screen. Unknown number. Her stomach tightened. For a moment she thought about letting it go to voicemail. Then she remembered the way Walter had looked at her, clinging to her hand like she was the only thing holding him here, and she answered. "Hello?" A warm, professional voice greeted her. "Good afternoon, Ms. Monroe. This is Helen Wright, personal assistant to Mr. Walter Green. I hope I'm not calling at a bad time." Carla blinked, unsure if she'd heard correctly. "Walter Green? From the hospital?" "Yes, ma'am. He's asked to speak with you personally. He was very specific. If you're available, transportation has been arranged to bring you to his office for a private meeting." Carla's brain stuttered. Her first instinct was confusion, followed by suspicion, then something that felt like a spark of relief? No, caution. She'd been burned already. Still, she asked quietly, why? There was a pause. Helen's voice softened. "All I can say is he's extremely grateful, and he wants to speak to you directly. If you'd prefer not to come, we understand, but the invitation is real." For a moment, Carla didn't speak. She stared at the mug in her hand, now trembling just slightly. Something inside her shifted. A long-forgotten current of hope, almost too fragile to name. She cleared her throat. "All right. I'll go." An hour later, a sleek black sedan pulled up in front of her building. The driver, a calm man in his 50s, greeted her by name and opened the door with quiet respect. No press, no spectacle, just calm efficiency. Carla sat in the back seat, hands folded tight in her lap as the city moved past her window. She wasn't dressed for meetings, just dark jeans and a simple blouse, but something told her this wasn't about appearance. The car pulled up in front of a glass-paneled high-rise downtown. A security officer opened the door before she could even reach for the handle. "Ms. Monroe," he said with a small nod, "Mr. Green is expecting you." She was escorted through a marble lobby, the kind that smelled of polished stone and rich decisions. The elevator was private, silent, rising to the top floor with a soft whoosh. When the doors opened, sunlight poured into the hallway from massive windows. The air felt different here, still but expectant. She stepped into the office. Walter Green sat in a wheelchair near the far end of the room, facing the city through glass walls. He wore a charcoal gray suit, a wool blanket tucked over his legs, and an oxygen tube nestled discreetly along his nose. His breathing was labored but steady. His eyes turned when she entered, not weak, not foggy, but focused and alert. Beside him stood the man in the navy suit. Richard Hale. The same man Carla had seen through the glass that day. Her stomach clenched on instinct, but she kept her posture even. Walter gestured to her gently. "Nurse Monroe." Carla stepped forward, unsure of what to say. "Mr. Green, how are you feeling?" He smiled faintly. "Alive, thanks to you." There was a beat of silence. Then he turned to Richard. His voice was soft but sharp. "She saved my life while half your staff stood still. Then you fired her." Richard shifted uncomfortably. "Mr. Green, the decision was made according to the revised triage." "I didn't ask for a policy review," Walter snapped. "I asked why no one helped me but her." Carla's eyes darted between the two men. Richard opened his mouth again, but Walter raised a hand. Don't. I've already asked for your resignation. You'll sign the papers before the hour ends. Richard went pale, jaw tight. He nodded stiffly and left the room without another word. Walter turned back to Carla. You didn't know who I was. That's why I trust you. You didn't help me for a bonus or recognition. You helped because it was right, even when it cost you everything. Carla swallowed, voice low. I wasn't trying to make a point. I just couldn't watch someone die. Walter nodded. Exactly. He gestured toward the desk where Helen had quietly laid a leather folder. That's for you. Carla stepped forward, opened it slowly. Inside was a formal proposal. Director of Human-Centered Care Initiative's Green Health System. The terms were shocking. Salary nearly triple what she had earned, a dedicated team, a start-up budget for a new division focused on community outreach and trauma response. Full autonomy to hire nurses she trusted, build programs based on ethics, not red tape. And then, tucked into the back sleeve, a simple engraved plaque. The Carla Monroe Center for Human Care. Because saving a life should never cost you your own. Carla stared at it, throat tight. Her hands trembled slightly as she looked up at him. Walter's expression was calm, but his eyes shimmered. You reminded me what medicine was supposed to be. Not business, not protocol. Humanity. She tried to respond, but the words didn't come. Only tears. Not loud, not messy, just quiet, overwhelmed tears sliding down her cheeks as she held the plaque against her chest like a lifeline. Walter smiled. We're opening the new wing this fall. I want you to lead it. Carla nodded slowly, and for the first time in days, she felt her heart beating not from rage or panic, but something far more dangerous. She felt hope. The sun rose slow and golden over the Green Health campus, casting long streaks of light through the curved glass walls of the new wing. Inside, the polished floor reflected the warmth like a mirror, and fresh flowers in white vases lined the entrance lobby. But it wasn't the building that drew the small crowd gathering that morning. It was what it represented. Nurses in pressed uniforms stood shoulder to shoulder with social workers, doctors, community volunteers, and patients past and present, all waiting, not for ceremony, but for a moment that meant something deeper. At the front, beside the speaker's podium, stood a woman in a navy blue suit. Not a lab coat, not scrubs. Her hair coiled neatly, her hands steady even if her heart wasn't. Carla Monroe adjusted the mic gently. Her voice didn't tremble when she spoke. I was told once that helping someone without permission could cost you everything, she began, her gaze moving across the crowd slowly. And for a few days, it did. The audience listened in silence. Cameras clicked faintly from the press row, but no one interrupted. I lost my job. My name disappeared from the staff roster overnight. No hearings, no defense, just an email. What they didn't know is I would have done it again. She paused, not for effect, but because her chest was full. I stayed beside a man in the lobby because he was in pain, and no one else moved. That should never be the exception in this profession. That should be the standard. She didn't say it to impress. She said it because it needed to be said. Because she had lived the silence of inaction, the burn of being told she should have watched instead of helped, followed rules instead of her instinct, and she wasn't going to let that be the lesson passed forward. Behind her, Walter Green sat in his wheelchair, his eyes wet but bright. Helen stood nearby, arms crossed with quiet pride. Carla turned her head slightly toward them, offering a nod. Then she looked out again. This wing. It's not just about new rooms or funding or titles. It's about a promise that no patient will be ignored, that no nurse will be punished for doing the right thing, that compassion will never be written off as a liability again. The applause didn't erupt all at once. It came like a rising tide, soft at first, then building until it filled the room, not loud for volume's sake, but for what it carried. Gratitude, agreement, understanding. Carla stepped back from the mic. She didn't smile wide, didn't wave. She just closed her eyes for a moment and breathed in. Not to steel herself, but to finally exhale 3 days of silence, 3 days of questioning her worth, 3 days of wondering if any of it had mattered. And then, slowly, she turned toward the east wall of the lobby, where the cloth-covered frame hung waiting. Helen stepped up beside her. "You ready?" Carla nodded. Together they pulled the cloth down. Behind it, a black-and-white photograph. Framed clean, no caption needed, until you read the words beneath it etched in gold. The Carla Monroe Center for Human Care Compassion means staying when others walk away. The image was simple but powerful. Carla in her scrubs, kneeling beside a frail man in the hospital lobby. Her hand on his, eyes focused, calm. Behind the glass, barely in frame, a suited man watching. Unmoving. Walter had insisted the image be real. No staged portraits, no forced glamour, just the truth. The moment everything shifted. As people moved closer to view it, Carla stepped back, letting the room have the story. A little girl in a wheelchair pointed to the photo, asking her mother, "Is that really her?" The mother smiled and nodded. "Yes, that's her." Walter rolled up beside her then, voice gravelly but amused. "Told you they'd come." Carla looked down at him, her lips curving just slightly. "You were right. For once." He chuckled, coughing once, but brushing it off. "I built this system with spreadsheets and contracts, but you gave it a pulse." Carla's eyes softened. "No, you just remembered what it was supposed to feel like." A nurse approached, maybe 22, her badge still shiny. "Miss Monroe, I just wanted to say thank you. For all of it." Carla met her gaze directly. "Don't thank me. Just promise me you won't ever let protocol stop you from seeing the person in front of you. That's all I ask." The young nurse nodded, and Carla knew it landed. Really landed. The rest of the morning passed in a gentle blur. Handshakes, smiles, photos she didn't ask for. But beneath it all was something she hadn't felt in a long time. Not just pride. Purpose. As the crowd began to thin, Carla returned to the wall once more, alone this time. She stood before her own name, not out of vanity, but quiet affirmation. It had cost her dearly, her peace, her job, her belief in the system, but it had brought something better. A new standard. A place where nurses would no longer have to choose between heart and hierarchy. She pressed her palm lightly against the plaque, the cool metal grounding her. This wasn't about being honored. It was about being heard. And finally, she had been. Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.